Hello, my name is Matthew Wizinsky. I am the author of Design After Capitalism. This is the overview video lecture for the book. This is the first of 6 lectures, which covers the introduction and main ideas of the book. The following 5 lectures cover the main content of the book, following its 3 parts. Welcome and thanks for joining me. This is one of several ancillary tools I am putting together to go along with the book. Tools that I hope will make the book and its ideas both more practicable but also more teachable. So to extend the ideas to design students, design practitioners, design researchers, and others who are interested in the topics. The book is slated for release in spring 2022 and will come out on the MIT Press. So first of all, I want to address this question. What is design after capitalism? What do I mean by this title, and what are the kinds of ideas that are encapsulated in this title and in the book? I'm going to take that in 2 parts, really, starting with design. I begin in the introduction to the book by saying design is world making, and I admit that that's a rather grandiose statement, but the reality is that design practices, professions of design are all engaged in making up the material cultures of our lives. And they make up the objects and symbols that define our everyday lives and really define, in many ways, the ways that we experience and navigate our different worlds in everyday life. And so a lot of different forms of design exist, and a lot of different fields use this term in different ways. Based on my own practices, my own teaching and research, I'm thinking particularly about those kinds of design that have to do with making up the objects and symbols of the human scale. So product design, service design, fashion, graphic design, user experience and interaction design, and kind of meta design of UX design. The other half of the title then is After Capitalism. And this is a term that has actually been around for some time. It has popped up in a wide range of different disciplines in literature and scholarship that's trying to get a handle on what the next paradigm of political economy might look like. And so it's not something that we have a firm view of or can really sort of describe in its totality because it doesn't exist yet. But it's something that many people from many different fields have sort of called out is a new political economy that is emerging, or at least is attempting to emerge from within capitalism, that might further grow to erode and eventually replace capitalism. And so we're kind of stuck with this not quite yet their name of after capitalism. This is also to point out that the book does pull in a lot of references from fields well outside design, fields like philosophy, sociology, economics, sustainability studies, and others, and attempts to take those concepts, those ideas, empirical evidence from this really wide range of fields that are looking at how society is structured and what it produces, and to make sense of those for design, to bring those into the purview of design so that designers can also understand those ideas and think in those terms. So putting the two together then, design after capitalism is sort of my attempt to propose a modified version of design. It stems from what I see, and I'm not alone, I think, in identifying as twin contemporary crises of climate change and social justice, or maybe social inequality more broadly. And I think that if we are really to take seriously, as I do, the fact that design has a capacity to really create systemic and widespread social change, then I think we really need to very squarely identify the way that all of these issues are tied to some of the economic constraints of not only society, but how design itself operates. And so in calling it design after capitalism, it's trying to put a name on what I hope or I think can become design for this next political economy, a new modified discipline. So why did I write this book? Like, why do I care about this? I am a designer. I also have owned design studios. So I look at this squarely from the perspective of design, knowing what it means to make a living and pay the rent and pay the bills by doing design work. I say that also to say that I don't come at the project with a particular, existing social bent. I don't consider myself a Marxist, a socialist, or communist per se, or at least not with any particular, identifiable group inside those terms. But I do believe in design's capacity to implement change. I do know firsthand, I think intimately, the value of doing design with and for others, meaning actually working very closely with people to affect their everyday lives. And yet I often find myself disappointed in how narrowly I see design's change-making capacity being applied. And so I say this also in the introduction. I say that in my own thinking and work, in every attempt to try to imagine design truly remaking the world into something more egalitarian, more democratic, more sustainable, I just kept running into the same wall, and that wall is capitalism. I also wrote this book because I'm a design educator, and I work with students from fields like industrial design, fashion design, communication design, and other sort of broader fields like UX design. And I see in young people that I teach and I work with today a great deal of anxiety and concern about the world that they are living in, the world that they're participating in creating, and what their work as designers might do to contribute positively or negatively to that. And so thinking about the ways in which design is connected to the ecological crises that we're experiencing, producing mountains of electronic waste in far-flung areas of the world as well as in our own neighborhoods. Thinking about the way that design is involved in global supply chains and global labor chains that have people working in sweatshops to create the garments that we're designing from our own, comfortable lives. Thinking about the way that our material sourcing and the sort of decisions that we make are tied into global conflicts, migration, etc. And even looking at it from, I'd say, a totally privileged point of view inside the United States in 2021, where I'm sitting, looking at the ways that our sort of contemporary culture is loaded with crises of anxiety, depression, mental health issues, as well as a certain kind of paralysis around what we might do about technology, about climate, etc. And so I hear often in criticizing or questioning some of these issues, this almost desperate resignation. What can we do? What can we do about it? And in some ways, this is an attempt to start to point in a new direction. So I think to address it head on, need to identify that design, or at least the kinds of modern design that I'm describing here, was born into industrial capitalism. It was born into a very specific historical political economy. We also have to notice that particular paradigm has totally changed and has been changed for some time now. I think that design has kept up fairly well, economically at least, meaning designers are still quite competitive and can find good jobs and good salaries, have actually maybe moved up in the world somewhat over the last couple of decades, finding their ways into new fields, new domains, and taking on broader and greater responsibilities within large organizations, which I think is really fantastic. But I don't know that we have kept up so well as a discipline with what we are doing socially, politically, culturally, and ecologically. That the economical piece of the puzzle is just one of them, but it's tied to these other issues that I just can't help but wonder, can't design do better? So I see from where I'm sitting that design is struggling to materialize preferable states. And this is to cite or to call out the off-cited definition of design by Herbert Simon, that it's about creating preferable states. So I think design is struggling to materialize preferable states while also confronting new ethical and ecological challenges that are tied to, in some combination, climate change, technological change, and social inequities. So my suggestion here, my proposal, is that we look really deeply at how design is practiced under the logics and sort of the structures of capitalism, so that we can challenge those logics, challenge those structures, and even shift mindsets and the discipline to come up with something better. This is an imminent form of critique, which means it is a critique that's calling out contradictions or problems of society from within that society in order to suggest possibilities for change. So I pull up this little meme with the guy living under feudalism who thinks or says we should improve society somewhat, and the guy pops up to say, yet you participate in society, curious. So is it hypocritical to make claims that change is desirable, or that social change is even possible? And this is to say that it is a structural form of critique. It's not a critique of specific individuals or their particular intentions or values, but really looking at the way that the social structures and institutions that we have are creating certain social and economic outcomes. And design is one piece of that puzzle, but what are the outcomes of design under contemporary capitalism? To say it's a structural critique also says that it means that it's about not changing, one person's mind or one person's practice, but really transforming a discipline. And what I attempt to do in this book is to not only say so, but to also demonstrate some principles and strategies that can make this actionable today. As I mentioned, there are a great deal of other disciplines and other fields of research and knowledge that are brought into this. I'm showing on screen here just a handful of, I think, some of the important texts that I've referenced in the book. There are many others, but they roughly fall into a couple of camps. A group, sort of a body of literature that is trying to describe what after capitalism might look like. In some cases, trying to make a really positive vision of emerging from capitalism into this next stage. In other cases, calling out some of the major risks or really negative outcomes that could come on the other side of capitalism. There are probably libraries full of critiques of capitalism. I've gathered up a small collection of those and a specific collection of those to call out some of the structural and social issues. And finally, a smaller set of books from the world of design that are looking at sort of alternative models of design approaches, design thinking, design practices, design methods, coming from practicing designers, coming from design scholars, design historians, and design philosophers. And one thing that was really fascinating to me in conducting this research is looking at how sort of surprisingly aligned many of those sort of criticizing and looking forward at beyond capitalism have called out the key drivers of change, the things that are sitting on our horizon are sort of emerging right now that are really pushing towards a change in political economy, whether that's good or bad. And so surprisingly diverse literature from philosophy, cultural studies, economic studies, political science, etc., is really calling out both climate change and technological change, in particular what's been called the fourth industrial revolution, which is really sort of like remaking the way machines and intelligent machines and humans interface with symbols, systems, and the material resources of our planet. And so the particular sort of drivers of change that are being called out suggest that something will need to transform, and so would be useful to have sort of an idea of where we want to go. I also call out a number of case studies in the book, both historical case studies and contemporary case studies that I think start to point the way in different directions toward what might be post-capitalist models of design practice. And so these are all sort of, I'd say, fragmentary precedents in a way. There are some pieces or some ideas that I think are really intriguing and really suggest transformative possibilities for the discipline as a whole, and yet they are, I'd say, on the whole, they are mostly outliers. And so the idea of calling out those case studies is to inspire and point towards new ways of doing things that designers have already done or are doing, so clearly are possible, and to think about how those might be brought into the discipline more broadly. How can we learn from some of these things so that we can begin to kind of replicate some of the ideas or some of the methods of practice in a more broad way that's directed towards this idea of transcending capitalism. In the spirit of getting as practical as possible, I also try to bring this down to the level of not only key principles. I call out 4 key principles for a post-capitalist model of design practice, but think about how those key principles would work at different layers of the work of design. So at the layer of doing a project, at the layer of organizing and structuring and sort of living a practice, over not just a year, but over decades, and also thinking about the discipline itself. What are those structures and infrastructures that sort of lead and guide and shape a discipline? And so if we take the 4 main principles and apply them across those 3 layers, I come up with 12 specific strategies, and within each of those strategies have very specific guidelines that are prompted as kind of questions for designers to consider as they do their work. One of the, I think, most important intellectual sort of conceptual guides for me in this project and in this research comes from the late American sociologist Eric Olin Wright. Wright was a professor of sociology at University of Wisconsin in Madison for a very long time, 40 years, I think, and had done a huge amount of work around a project he called Real Utopias, studying different groups of people around the world who were creating alternative life models for society, politics, economy, culture within global capitalism, finding ways to escape, resist, tame, and collectively to somewhat erode what capitalism does as a system that people live within. And so one of the main ideas that I borrow from Wright, and I should mention that I greatly admired Wright. He became something of a mentor and a friend near the end of his life, and really gained a lot from that short amount of time that we talked about these things. Was this notion of the strategic logics of anti-capitalism. So thinking on one end, like what does it mean to think beyond capitalism when it comes to the state, or when it comes to thinking about governmental institutions of capitalism, laws, policies, etc. And then what does it mean to think about transcending capitalism or moving beyond capitalism in civil society? And so he calls out in this 2x2 different ways of neutralizing harms or transcending structures between the state and civil society. And I think the main point is that it's not about smashing the state. It's not about overnight political revolution, instituting a new regime. These things have been tried over and over again and have by and large been failures in the 20th century and beyond. But his point is that if we can combine taming the harms of sort of capitalist state actors, we can tame or sort of resist the harms of a capitalist civil society, we can somewhat escape the structures of civil society, capitalist civil society, that together these things can erode. And what I think, as I understand that he means by that, is that we can create new ways of doing things that allow people to increasingly rely on new forms of social structures, new forms of politics, new forms of economics that don't have them rely on, sort of corporate, for-profit, capitalist models of existence. That we can get away from the sort of dominance of working for a wage labor in order to buy things. And so this, to me, is really a super important idea, and I think is like squarely where design works. The design works in this space of creating ways of being within civil society. And so I really think of and repeatedly return to the idea of erosion when talking about design after capitalism. Similarly, following Wright's lead, I structured the book in 3 parts that are modeled exactly after his book called Envisioning Real Utopias. The first one is called Diagnosis and Critique. The second one is called Alternatives, where I look at alternative models of design historically and contemporarily and try to come up with theories for alternatives. And then the final section, the third section, is called Transformation, really looking at where do we want to go and how do we get there. This concludes the overview. Beyond this introduction, there are 5 lecture videos covering the 3 parts of the book. Each video concludes with a few summary statements, and many will also include reflection questions to review the material.